The poster's titled, "Am I the asshole for refusing to reconcile with my parents after my sister finally confessed she fabricated everything that got me kicked out at 15?
Welcome to Popcorn Red Friday story. Today's story is absolutely insane. Imagine being kicked out at 15 in a storm because your sister lied about you, only to face her 10 years later while giving the keynote speech at her graduation. This is the ultimate global revenge, so let's get into it.
I need to write this down because something happened last week that I have been carrying around for 13 years. And I think I finally need to let other people weigh in. I'll start with the night that changed everything. I was 15. It was raining so hard you couldn't see 3 feet in front of you. My dad opened the front door, looked at me, and said, "Get out. I don't need a sick daughter." And then he closed the door. I'll explain how we got there. That growing up, my younger sister, Em, and I were treated very differently. I don't say this bitterly. It's just the truth. I was the one who got good grades, won academic competitions, never missed curfew. Em was the one who cried easily, needed constant reassurance, and had a talent for making every room revolve around her feelings. My parents called it sensitivity. I called it what it was, even at 15, when I started getting tutoring help from a classmate. A boy named Jay who was kind and patient and nothing more than a study partner, Em noticed. I don't know exactly what she felt. Jealousy, maybe. A sense that someone was paying attention to me instead of her. What she did next I didn't find out in full until much later, Em. Fabricated text messages, fake screenshots that made it look like I had been sending her threatening, cruel messages for months. She pressed her own arm against the edge of a dresser until bruises formed. Then she went to my parents, showed them everything, and told them I had been bullying and physically hurting her. My parents did not ask me a single question till my dad came to my room. Told me what I had supposedly done, and when I tried to explain, he held up his hand and said he didn't want to hear it. My mom stood in the hallway and didn't look at me once. I was given 10 minutes to grab whatever I could carry. It was the middle of a storm. I don't remember how long I walked. I remember the rain and the dark and the sound of a car that came around a corner too fast and couldn't stop in time. I woke up in a hospital. The woman sitting next to my bed was the driver. Her name was E. She was a university professor, and she had stayed at the scene, ridden with me in the ambulance, and was still there when I opened my eyes. She looked more shaken than I felt. About an hour later, my parents arrived. When my dad walked into the room and saw E sitting beside me, a stranger holding my hand, he stopped in the doorway. His hands were shaking. I watched him look at her and then look at me and then look back at her like he was trying to figure out what he was seeing. He didn't say he was sorry. Neither did my mom. They asked the doctor questions about my injuries in flat, clinical voices and stood on the other side of the room for me the entire time. He stayed. They left after 40 minutes. A social worker came to see me the next morning. I told her everything. The argument, being sent out in the storm, the walk, the car. She listened without interrupting. At the end, she told me I had options. He had already told the social worker she would take me, and if I wanted, I said yes. Not because I hated my parents. I said yes because I was 15 years old, and I had just spent the night in a hospital alone, and I needed to be somewhere safe. That was the whole reason Daddy taught me that education was freedom. Those were almost her exact words the first week I lived with her, and I held on to them for years afterward. I got a full scholarship for university, then a graduate degree. I went into education policy. 6 years ago, I founded a scholarship fund called Second Chances for kids who had fallen through the cracks the way I did. I am 28 now. I have a career I am proud of. I have E, who is the only mother I have known in any meaningful sense. I had not spoken to my parents or Em in 13 years, until last month, when Em apparently confessed everything. I don't know exactly what happened on her end. I only know what my parents told me when they reached out. They said Em had come to them and admitted that the messages were fake, that the bruises were self-inflicted, that she had lied. They said they were sorry. They said they wanted to see me. I have not responded yet, so here's my actual question. Am I the asshole for not wanting to reconcile? For feeling like 13 years later is too late for sorry? And a few things I keep turning over in my head that I genuinely want other people's thoughts on. Is there a version of this where I owe my parents a conversation, even if I don't owe them forgiveness? Does it matter that they believed a 14-year-old without asking a single question? Or does it matter more that they eventually found out the truth? And what do I actually do with this? To long. Didn't read. My sister fabricated evidence and got me kicked out of my house at 15 during a storm. I was hit by a car ended up in the hospital and left with a stranger who became my foster parent and the most important person in my life. 13 years later, my sister confessed everything. My parents are asking to reconcile. I don't know if I want to. Am I the asshole? Edit. The response to this has completely overwhelmed me. I'm trying to read everything. To answer the question I keep seeing, yes, he knows I posted this. She is sitting across from me right now drinking tea and pretending not to be curious about my screen. Edit 2. Something just came up that changes things slightly. I'll explain in the update. It's not bad. It's just a lot.
Okay, I'm literally gasping. Can you believe this? Her own father pushed her out in a rainstorm at 50 because of fake text messages. My heart just raced for that poor girl. But then she Miss E, the stranger, who saved her life and became her real mom. Now OP is 28, super successful, and she just found out her sister AIM is in the audience of a species about to give. Talk about a plot twist. Is she going to play herself, or is she going to tell the truth in front of 2,000 people? Drop your popcorn, because Disney parked a poor fire.
Hi, I promised an update and I need to write this down while it's still fresh. Some context I left out of the original post because I didn't think it was relevant. I was wrong 3 weeks ago, before my parents reached out. I had been invited to give the keynote speech at a university graduation ceremony. I do this occasionally now as part of my work with Second Chances. It's something I genuinely love, talking to young people who are just starting out, many of whom have had difficult roads to get. And what I did not know when I accepted the invitation is that M was in that graduating class that I found out the morning of the ceremony when E mentioned she had looked up the program and seen the name. I stood in the kitchen for about 30 seconds and then decided I was going to do it anyway. I had been invited. I had prepared a speech. I was going to give it. The auditorium held around 1,000 people. I stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd, and within about 30 seconds I found them, my parents in the family section, and M in the graduating rows, in her cap and gown. Looking up at the stage as she had not seen me yet, I gave the speech I had prepared. About halfway through, I told a story. I told it in third person, about a girl who was 15 years old, sent out into a storm by the people who were supposed to protect her, who was hit by a car, who woke up in a hospital and made a choice to build something from nothing. I talked about what it meant to find family that wasn't blood. I said, as clearly as I could from that stage, family is not always the people you were born to. It is the people who choose to stay. By the time I got to that line, M had recognized me, yet I watched it happen. She had gone completely still. Her face had changed in a way I cannot fully describe, not guilt exactly, not shock exactly, something that looked more like the specific terror of someone who has been carrying a secret so long they forgot it wasn't permanent. I found out later from one of the faculty members who attended that M had told her friends at this university that her older sister had died in a car accident years ago. That was the story she had been living with. That was how she had explained my absence her entire adult life. Those friends were sitting next to her in the graduating rows when I walked onto that stage after the ceremony. My parents found me outside the hall. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 hours. My mom was holding a handkerchief. And was nowhere to be seen. My dad said my name, just my name. And then he stopped, like he had rehearsed something and forgotten all of it. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said I needed some time, and I walked back to where he was waiting by the car. I don't have a clean ending to this part. I told my parents I would be in touch. I don't know yet if that was the right thing to say. His friends had, by that point, already started asking questions. I'm told it did not go well for her. I'll update when I know what I'm going to do about my parents.
She did that. Opie really told her life story on that stage, while her sister sat there in a cap and gown. And the best part? M had told everyone Opie was dead. Could you imagine the look on her Wren's faces? That's what I call karma. But now, the parents are back, crying and begging for a second chance after 10 years of silence. OP is heading to a coffee shop to face them one last time. Is he going to let them back in, or is he shutting that door for good? This is the final episode and is a total tear-jerker. Less finesses.
Update the final update. I want to give people the full picture because I think I owe that to everyone who has followed this. 2 weeks after the graduation, I agreed to meet my parents. One time, a coffee shop halfway between their city and mine. I asked you to come with me. Not to speak, just to be there to him was not invited if my parents arrived before us. When I walked in, my mom stood up immediately and my dad stayed seated for a moment, like his legs weren't working. He stood eventually. Nobody hugged, we sat down. A waitress came and we all ordered coffee that none of us touched as my dad spoke first. He told me that after the graduation ceremony, Em had come to them and broken down completely. He said she had confessed everything in detail, the fake screenshots, the bruises, all of it. He said she had told them she had spent years telling people I was dead because it was easier than explaining what she had done, that my mom cried through most of this. My dad kept his voice steady, but his hands were doing the same thing they had done in that hospital room 13 years ago. A fine, constant tremor he couldn't seem to stop. They said they were sorry. They said it more than once, in different ways, and I believe they meant it. I don't think they were performing. I think they had spent a week sitting with something they couldn't put down, and this was the only thing they knew how to do with it. I waited until they were finished. Then I said, I forgive you. My mom exhaled like she had been holding her breath for an hour, but I said, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I need you to understand the difference. I told them that forgiving them was something I was doing for myself, not for them. That I had spent a long time carrying anger that belonged to them, and I was putting it down. But that didn't mean there was a relationship to return to. I was not the same person who had walked out that door at 15. They were not the same people either. We were strangers who shared a history, and I was not interested in pretending otherwise. My dad asked if there was anything they could do. I said, you can live with what you know now. That's enough. My mom asked about him. I told her honestly that Em did not exist in my life in any capacity, and that was not going to change. Not because I hadn't processed it. I had for years, with a therapist who helped me put it somewhere I could carry it without being crushed by it. But because some doors, once closed, stay closed. Not out of cruelty. Just out of self-preservation as we sat for another 20 minutes. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't warm. It was just honest, which was more than anything we had ever managed before. When we stood to leave, my mom reached out and touched my arm very briefly. I didn't pull away. That was the last time I saw them. I am 28 years old. I have a career I built from nothing in a storm. I have a scholarship fund that has now put 200 kids through school who would otherwise have fallen through the same cracks I fell through. I have E, who taught me that education was freedom and who has shown up for me every single day for 13 years without being asked. Last week, E and I had dinner at the small table by her kitchen window. The same table where I did homework when I was 16 and scared and rebuilding everything. She made pasta. We talked about nothing important. She laughed at something I said and I thought, this is it. This is what I was looking for the whole time. Not a perfect ending. Not justice. Exactly. Em lost her friends and the version of herself she had been performing for years. My parents are living with a truth they can't undo. I don't feel triumphant about any of it. I just feel free. Your value is not decided by the people who leave you. It's decided by how you grow after they're gone. I think that's all I have to long. Didn't read. Met my parents at a coffee shop. They apologized. I told them I forgave them, but that forgiveness isn't reconciliation, and they belong to my past. Emma's not in my life. The Second Chances Fund has helped 200 kids. I had dinner with you last week, and I am okay. More than okay, actually.
Wow. Just wow. I am so moved by how Opie handled that. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Read that again. That is such a powerful lesson for all of us. She didn't let anger rule her life, but she also didn't let the people who fell her back into her inner circle. She chose her own peace, and she chose E, the woman who actually earned the title of mother. And let's talk about the Second Chances one. 200 kids getting a future because Opie turned her pain into a purpose. That is the best revenge anyone could ever have. Em had to live with her lies being exposed, and the parents have to live with the fact that they lost $1 million because they didn't ask a single question. But I have to ask you, Popcorn's escrow, would you have been as strong as Opie? Could you sit across from those parents and say, I forgive you, without letting them back in? Or would you have stayed away forever? So I can't wait to read your comments on this one. If this story inspired you, please smash that like button and subscribe to Pocket Reds for this story. We love having you here. Frump your popcorn, stay strong, and I see you in the next one. Goodbye.